I'm reviewing Florida Statute 810.02, which is the burglary statute, specifically Section 1B.
I know.
2B. That indicates, and let me just go through the entire definition of burglary. Under Section B, the offense committed after July 1st, 2001, burglary means entering a dwelling, a structure, or a conveyance with the intent to commit an offense therein, unless the premises are at the time open to the public or the defendant is licensed or invited to enter. 2, notwithstanding a license or invited entry, remains in the dwelling, structure, or conveyance, A, surreptitiously with the intent to commit an offense therein, or B, after permission to remain therein has been withdrawn. So I believe that the jury instruction should accurately reflect that as well.
All right.
So it should read, or remain in the structure after permission to remain therein had been withdrawn. So it would accurately reflect the wording of the statute. All right?
Yes, sir.
Any other issues with count 3? All right, count 4, exploitation of the elderly. Any issues?
Judge, the issue of consent or authorization, what looks at count 6 next to the bottom, it says section 2, we did so without first obtaining consent. I see how it breaks down from 1 through 4. My concerns are the essential process.
I'm just wait one. I'm a little confused about what we're referring to. I'm working on count 4 right now.
Right.
All right, and you're looking at what element, or?
Only through 1 through 4.
Okay.
There's no language on any consent or authorization. That's a concern. Giving testimony in the case. And I think the court looks next, just taking the language out of context. Look at count 5. We talk about that instruction 2. Did so first obtaining consent, Marshall sold. So my concern is that at least it should be considered by the jury whether there was authorization or consent.
Take a look at the jury instruction.
Thank you.
And for the record, exploitation of the elderly is 14.9 in standard jury instructions.
Not last year's.
Who's this? Sarah, can you bring Karen's most current statute book?
It's blue.
It's blue. Yeah, blue statute book.
Take one.
Yes. All right. All right, thanks, Judge.
The court has reviewed 14.9 as it applies in jury instructions to Florida Statute 825.103, subsection 1B. Let's review the information. That is the charge which has been set forth in the information, and the statute which has been set forth in the information finds that the jury instruction as set forth in count 4 is an accurate reflection of the Supreme Court's promulgated jury instruction and will remain as it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Count 5, fraudulent use of personal identification. And this reflects the December 10th, 2016, count 5 of the information. Any objections?
None.
All right. Count 6, reflective of the December 10th, 2016 incident.
Count
Fraudulent
6
use of
should be
personal
December
identification.
11th.
I'm sorry, December. This says count 6, December 11th, 2016.
Yes,
Did I say something
You
different?
said the 10th.
Oh, my apologies.
that's okay.
I must have been thinking something else. December 11th, 2016. Any objection?
None.
All right. Count 7, December 14th, 2016. Fraudulent use of personal identification information. Any objection?
None.
Thank you. Count 8, fraudulent use of personal identification. December 14th, 2016. Any objection?
None.
Count 9, fraudulent use of personal identification information, December 15th, 2016. Any objection?
None.
Count 10, fraudulent use of personal identification information, December 16th, 2016. Any objection?
None.
Count 11, fraudulent use of personal identification information, December 17th, 2016. Any objection?
None.
Count 12, fraudulent use of personal identification information, December 18th, 2016. Any objection?
None.
Count 13, fraudulent use of personal identification information, December 19th, 2016. Any objection?
None.
Count 14, fraudulent use of personal identification information, December 28th, 2016. Any objection?
None.
Moving on to count 15, offense against computer users. Allegation of December 22nd, 2016. Any objection?
Just once again, you are on the issue whether or not there was consent or authorization to use that computer.
All right.
I just jumped up to 5 minutes.
Bravely, I've been checking through the fraud section of the jury instructions. I don't see what I'm looking for here. Where did you
It's
get this?
under,
jury?
it's actually under the criminal mischief,
Criminal mischief? Okay.
that category. Scheme, and it was in oranges. These are in oranges. So it's in-
Court has reviewed 12.7, offense against computer users. Has compared it with the jury instruction provided by the state and finds that the jury instruction is an accurate reflection of the jury instruction promulgated by the Supreme Court related to Florida Statute 815.062B, which is the crime alleged. And the court finds that the jury instruction will stand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, 16 with the same objection noted for the record. Mr. Lakin, any other objections?
None.
All right, thank you. And once again, count 17 with the same objection on the record. Any other objections? All right, count 18, fraudulent use of personal identification information reflective of December 13th, 2016. Any objection?
None.
3.4, when lesser included crimes or attempts are included, the lesser crimes indicated for attempted murder in the first degree are attempted murder in the second degree and attempted manslaughter. Any issue?
None.
The lesser crime indicated for the definition of kidnapping is false imprisonment. Any issue?
None.
Lesser crime for burglary with a battery are or is burglary.
None.
Lesser crime indicated for definition of exploitation of the elderly are grand theft, value taken was grand theft value taken was and grand theft value taken was.
I'll put those
You gotta
to
put
reflect the verdict form. Thank you.
All right, very good.
None.
All right, and lesser included crime for fraudulent use of personal identification, there is none. And the lesser crime indicated in the definition of offenses against computer users is offense against computer users of a different degree. Any objection?
None.
All right, the definition for attempted second-degree murder is given. Any objection?
None.
Attempted manslaughter by act. Any objection?
None.
False imprisonment.
No.
Burglary.
I'm going to make that reflect the burglary with battery
Mm-hmm.
on count 3, Your Honor. Or element 3.
Element
Beg your pardon.
3.
Yes.
You're going to make it reflective of what?
Of the burglary with battery, the one that we discussed.
Yeah, with the remained in.
Yes, sir.
Yes. All right, that wording added. Any other objection other than the one noted for the record earlier? All right. Theft. Any objection to the jury instruction as provided?
None.
Offense against computer users. Any objection?
None.
3.7, plea of not guilty, reasonable doubt, burden of proof appears standard. Any objection?
None, Your Honor.
Weighing the evidence, 3.9. Any objection?
The only thing I didn't know, I thought in my years of doing this, giving this instruction, was instruction of conflict in evidence. I did not see that.
Let me just take a look here.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
The conflict in the evidence. We're talking about, I think you're talking about plea of not guilty, reasonable doubt. And you're referring to
Wait,
a reasonable doubt as to the guilt of the defendant may arise from the evidence, conflict in the evidence, or the lack of evidence. Is that what you're referring to? That's in the plea of not guilty 3.7.
thank you.
Weighing the evidence, I'm just making sure that we've covered all of the 10 possibles. Reputation is not involved. There's been no evidence of anyone being convicted of a crime or dishonesty or felonies. Those are not involved. If we had any evidence of any pressure or threat being used against anyone.
Haven't heard that, Mr.
All right, very good. I don't believe we've had any evidence of has the witness been offered or received money, preferred treatment, or any benefit.
None.
And I would say that the 6 that are set forth in the jury instruction are accurate. Any other objection?
None.
Very good. Defendant not testifying, as I read yesterday to Mr. Bybee. And Mr. Bybee, I'll ask you right now, could you just raise your hand? You can remain seated, sir. Just raise your right hand for me. Solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
We had this discussion yesterday afternoon, Mr. Bybee. You recall the discussion we had. Have you had any further thoughts on that, or you wish to remain in the position you were at yesterday afternoon?
Remain the same.
All right, then I will be reading 3.9a as I stated to you yesterday.
Great, thank you, sir.
All right. 3.9b, we do have defendant statements. That's standard.
No objection.
All right, rules of deliberation appear standard.
Yes, 3.
Cautionary instruction is standard. Single defendant, multiple counts under 3.12a appears standard.
That's fine, Your Honor.
Verdict appears standard.
Fine as well.
And the verdict form as provided by the state. Any objection?
Give me a minute, Your Honor.
Yeah, and actually, if you want to take a look at it, break.
I'd like to do that.
All right. Why don't we do that, and then before I send the jury out, I'll be reading 3.13, submitting the case to the jury.
Thank you very much.
All right. So why don't you take a look at the verdict form? If there's any issues in the verdict form, we can correct those very easily. But other than that, no objection to the jury instructions.
No.
And Ms. Frabley, you'll make the necessary corrections.
Yes, sir.
All right. Very good. All right. That concludes the charging conference in this case. Ms. Frederick, when we get to the jury instruction issues, because of the complexities of this case, I would like a copy of the crimes and elements portion of the jury instructions, a separate copy for each juror. They don't need all the weighing the evidence and things like that, but I'd like to have, as they're discussing them, I'd like to have those in front of each one of the jurors. So each one of the jurors can look at the elements as they're discussing them. So the count 1 through 18, just have an extra copy, one copy for every juror.
Yes.
All right? All right.
And when would you like the final product? When do you anticipate doing this, after lunch?
I'm anticipating doing it sometime this afternoon, so I would say, if we can do it over the lunch break. I'll take an hour and a half to allow you some extra time to do that, but I'd like to get the jury instructions taken care of before the end of today, so we can go right into closings tomorrow and get this case to the jury. All right? Any other issues?
No.
All right, let's bring out the jury.
All rise, jurors entering.
Please be seated, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen,
Good morning.
again, my usual questions to you, and we'll try to approach you with the instrument any way as to the facts and circumstances of this case.
Yes, sir.
Do you do any independent research into the facts and circumstances of this case? Do you read any news reports or see any news reports on television about this case? As we all sit here, the only thing we know about this case is what has come to you from the witness stand, the evidence introduced in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, record will so reflect, and we can have Sergeant Felix back on the stand, please.
Yes, sir.
Sergeant Felix.
Morning, Sergeant.
Good morning.
Mr. Fraley, you may continue your cross-examination, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Yesterday, during your direct examination, you told the jury that the investigation was over. And do you remember that?
The investigative part, yes.
And that was because it had been completed by night shift?
Yes, I night shift did the investigation, and when I arrived, I did the supervision task.
Supervision of what? If the investigation was over, what were you supervising?
I supervise gathering information on the incident so that I can relay that to my supervisors, who in return relays that to the chain of command. I also give direction to the deputies on certain details, on information that might need to be put in the report, etc., stuff like that.
Okay. And so you're still gathering details when you're out there?
Yes.
When one of your deputies, Deputy Butler, asked you if you wanted to talk to her, did you say, I don't want to talk to her? No, it ain't me talking to her. I'm just gonna...
Yes, at that time,
Objection. Improper.
at that time,
Did you say that?
at that time,
Sir, answer
my,
my question.
Your Honor, she's interrupting the witness.
She's asking him to answer the question. Sergeant, you understand the question?
yes,
Can you answer that question?
yes, I did say that.
So why wouldn't the sergeant that was in charge of gathering information want to talk to a woman who had accused someone of trying to murder her?
That wasn't my job responsibility at that time. When I arrived, all the witnesses, the fire rescue, everyone had already left. In my opinion, the investigation was...
We don't want to hear...
Well, I'm trying to...
Objection, Your Honor.
Allow him to answer us, please.
So a supervisor's job is not to do the investigation. As a supervisor, I don't speak or take an interview with the victims or the witnesses. I'm a supervisor. The deputies, that's their responsibilities. And down the road, criminal investigation detectives will do that. But my responsibility at that time as a supervisor is to gather the information, give that to my supervisor, who then relays it to his supervisor. Then I also felt that I have to give,
You've answered.
I also have to give direction to the deputies to make sure.
Wait. The objection was overruled.
Oh.
Now, did you not tell us yesterday that the investigation was over?
Yes,
Well, then why are you investigating if the investigation was over?
I think you're doing semantics.
No, I'm
because
not
it's-
doing semantics, sir. I'm
Let's
asking
not
you.
have an argument between.
I don't believe that my role is investigating. I never had direct contact with
Sir.
anyone.
Objection. Ron, I'd like to give us an opportunity to at least answer the questions we asked, open-ended.
Thank you. And Ms. Freilich, I'm going to ask that you allow the sergeant to give his answers before you move on to the next question.
My responsibility, I have certain criteria as a supervisor that I have to meet. And that is to relay the information on the incident, direct the deputies on what needs to be done and what needs to be put in the report, and also secure that facility so that the victim felt like she was secure and safe when we left. And at that time, that's what I did. That is not an investigation. That is doing tasks that a supervisor is responsible for.
Were you given information about Miss Soul when you arrived on scene?
Yes,
By whom?
by Deputy Butler.
Who else?
He was the main person who gave me the information. I'm not sure if Deputy Reynolds gave me any specific information. I know he was in our conversation.
And that information was that Bybee had Baker acted her and that she is somehow throwing him under the bus, correct?
That would be correct.
And so you were continuing your investigation because you said, let me call Quinn and see how he wants this written up. Who's Quinn?
He is my supervisor, lieutenant, but that is not continuing investigation. That's relaying information.
Well, wouldn't reporting what happened out there be part of an investigation?
Not in my opinion. It's relaying the information that was given to me. It's not direct information. As you say, it's hearsay. I'm getting information from them, and I relay that to my supervisor. That's my job responsibility. That is not part of the investigation. I'm not taking a statement from the witnesses. I'm not taking a statement from fire rescue. I'm not investigating anything. I'm there as a supervisor.
Okay. And as a supervisor, isn't it important to let the facts speak for themselves rather than trying to influence them?
I can only go by what I'm told.
Sir, I'm asking you a question. As a supervisor, is it not important for the facts that you got from your deputies to speak for themselves rather than trying to influence them?
Yes.
All right. Did you not tell Deputy Butler to put in his report that she has a tendency to fabricate stories?
I directed him to put that in there based on the information he received from the witnesses.
What witnesses?
The witnesses that were there from fire rescue and the neighbor who made those statements to him. I wasn't there to know that. I'm giving him direction. If this is what they told you, be sure to include that in your report.
Okay. And was it also important to tell him to just put that all in there and that there was no evidence that it actually occurred?
And I recall, Mr. Lake, and that's an accurate reflection of what was in the transcript.
I'll withdraw.
Thank you.
From the synopsis that the deputies gave me, I saw no factual basis to substantiate what she said occurred at the time.
So you were told that there were pills scattered on the floor, that there was blood on her nightgown, that Bybee went with blue gloves, and none of that appeared in the report that was generated by your squad, correct?
I was told nothing about any pills on the floor. I was told that Deputy Bybee tried to smother her with a pillow. That was the only information I was given. And that she had a small cut on her lip and a small spot of blood on her nightgown. That was it.
Wouldn't that be evidence? A cut on her lip and a small spot of blood on her nightgown?
Well, often elderly people,
No. Not often elderly people. Is a small spot of blood on a nightgown and a cut lip not worthy to be put in the report when someone says that someone came in here and tried to kill me?
it's subjective.
Pardon?
It's subjective.
Is it not your job to gather all the evidence and not to opine whether it's objective or subjective?
At that time, I was under the understanding that night shift had completed the investigation. That they had, I have no knowledge of what they put in their reports or what they observed. We were there to secure the residents, like I previously said. Secure the residents, make sure she's safe. They do their supplemental reports.
Who is they?
My deputies, Deputy Butler, Deputy Russell.
But you instructed them to put in there that there was no evidence.
Overruled.
Did you not?
I don't know if I used the word evidence.
Why don't we look at your statement? Would that help to refresh your recollection? Council, page 31. Read that final page yourself.
Okay.
Did that help to refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Did you tell your deputies to put in the report that there was no evidence that it actually occurred, and that's pretty much it?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Thank you. Redirect.
Good morning.
Did you try to influence in any way the other officers' reports?
No.
I asked you this yesterday. Did you yourself see any blood in that house?
No.
And did you see any struggle or signs of violence?
No.
And did you see any evidence of a crime?
No.
Thank you. Nothing else.
Mr. Frederick, if my review of my notes indicates that those questions, those last three questions asked of the witness, went beyond the scope of cross-examination. If you would like to recross, you may have it. Only if you wish. You don't have to.
No, I think I'm just going to let it where it is, Your Honor.
Very good. Sir, you may step down. Subject to recall?
No, Your Honor. No.
State?
No.
Subject to recall?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Sergeant, you are released from your subpoena, sir. You may go about your business.
Thank you.
Thank you. Defense, your next witness, please.
Deputy Chris Butler.
I do. Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, sir. May inquire, Mr. Beer.
Thank you.
Ready?
You set?
Yes, sir.
Morning.
Good morning.
Please state your name, spell your last name for the record.
My name is Deputy Christopher Butler, Butler.
You are employed with the Sarasota Sheriff's Office.
Yes, sir.
Not easy to say first thing in the morning. How long have you been employed with Sarasota Sheriff's Office?
I've been in the Sheriff's Office for 23 years.
What's your current assignment?
I'm currently assigned to the Patrol Division.
How long have you been in patrol?
I've been there since December of 2015.
Let me draw your attention and get to the meat of why you're here. Back to January 11th of 2017, were you dispatched or assigned to go to respond to a suspicious incident at roughly 6 a.m.?
Yes, I was requested to go to this place to relieve night shift.
Your day shift at that point?
Yes.
Is that typical that when there's something going on or an investigation going on, it transcends shifts, that you always come in and relieve prior shift?
If they need us there, sure.
Did you do that on that particular day at 3296 Brockton Lane?
Yes, Sergeant Allen asked for a day shift unit to relieve them.
When you arrived, Deputy, could you give us a brief description of what you saw, who was there?
There was Carson Plank was standing in the driveway next to Sergeant Allen, also standing in the driveway of Brockton Lane.
Any paramedics, EMTs?
I think they might have came just after I was there.
But you do recall seeing them?
Yes, yes I did, yes.
How long do you think you stayed at that residence that particular morning?
It was approximately an hour because after I got done with everything I was doing, I then went to my car and wrote the report.
Which brings me to my next issue. You were tasked, given the responsibility of writing the report in this case, is that correct?
Yes,
Did you actually conduct or perform any interviews of witnesses at the scene?
I spoke to Mary Ann and I also spoke to the victim.
When you spoke to Ms. Soul, did you notice any noticeable injuries on her?
I did not.
Did you notice any large amounts of blood in and about herself or on the floor?
The only blood I saw was on her nightgown.
When you arrived on scene, Deputy, did you actually go into the residence?
Yes, I did. After speaking to Sergeant Allen and Carson Plank.
Can you give us an idea how long you think that conversation was? And I think you said it was in the driveway.
Yes, a couple minutes.
Do you recall when you arrived whether the garage door was up or down?
It was opened. It was up.
Was the vehicle running?
No, it was not.
When you went inside the residence, did you notice any exhaust fumes, any odors from the running of the vehicle?
As far as I know, you wouldn't be able to smell that. Carbon monoxide, odorless and colorless.
Correct. Anything out of the ordinary that would indicate to you that the vehicle had been running?
Nothing that I saw.
Now, how long do you think you spent with Miss Soul?
A couple minutes, talked to her, and then I went back outside and spoke to Sergeant Allen and Carson Plank again.
And without getting into the specifics of what Miss Soul said, she told you what she alleged happened.
Yes, yes.
In your observation of the inside of the residence, Miss Soul, did you determine whether what she was telling you was true or not?
Objection.
I'll rephrase.
Rephrase. I'll sustain the objection, just rephrase.
Sure. Did you have any indication that a crime had been committed?
At that point, I wasn't sure.
All right. What did you put in your report, if you remember?
That what, she told me, what the Marianne told me, and then based on what I saw, that I didn't believe that a crime was committed. I believe that was when I was giving testimony to Detective Gaeta.
Now, when you fill out your report, it's a one-page report or is it multiple pages?
It could be multiple pages if there's, I have to list persons, so there's persons pages and a narrative.
Also, as part of your report, you list the names and identifying information, contact information of witnesses, as well as
Correct.
the individual telling you what happened.
Correct.
When the report asks you for type of report, what are you supposed to put there?
I guess the best suited, how would it be clear, like the best suited way to describe it.
All right.
If we were uncertain, it would be titled suspicious incident that would require further investigation.
What is the letter N, as in Nancy, under type of report?
Well, when I do a narrative, you put an N for narrative on the Wings report.
Yes, thank you.
Governor, may I approach me? Defense exhibit.
Is there something that he can't answer on that?
Judge.
You may approach the witness.
Thank you. Defense exhibit QQ. Show you what I've marked for identification is defendant's exhibit QQ. I'm going to ask that you look at the very top. Don't read it out loud, look at that yourself. You recognize that?
Yes.
Okay. And in this particular report that you filled out, under type of report, there's the N. Did that mean narrative?
Yes.
Okay.
Where this is, though, is on my report screen. It would be on, when you get to this narrative page.
Yes, sir.
It asks for the type of report. I can do a narrative or a supplement.
Yes, sir.
So this would be the narrative portion of it.
All right. When you complete your report on the screen, how is it then sent or archived in the sheriff's department?
I would send it onto the switch. So there's like an arrow that you press on it to send it to the server.
And it's saved, I think?
Yes.
Do you have the ability then to go back and retrieve that report in the event you need to?
The only way that can be retrieved once I send it is I would have to contact a supervisor or and say, hey, I need to fix this or add something or take something away, and then they could reject it. Or they can read the report and reject it, and then I'd have to fix whatever's missing, sometimes if you miss information, things like that.
Is it fair, by your description, that as a patrol officer, once you complete a report, send it electronically, you don't have the ability to go back in and change it?
Correct.
That is restricted from you being able to do that, correct?
Correct.
In this particular case, were you asked to go back and change your report?
Yes.
How many times?
As far as I know, just one.
And who is the person that asked you to change your report?
Captain Thorpe.
And what was it that you were asked to change?
It was just to remove my opinion, which would be like the last sentence on the report, just my opinion.
Why are you showing it to them? Because I'm going to object.
Okay. Did you actually see the reports that you changed? In other words, since you were asked to change them, you went and took out your opinion?
Yes.
Did you change anything else?
Not that I'm aware of.
For example, did you change what the offense was?
I don't believe so. I'd have to look at the original.
Do you recall what your original listing of the offense was?
I do not.
Government approach?
Amen.
Sir, I'm showing you what I marked as defendant's exhibit RR. Date stamp 1794. Take a look at that. Read that to yourself. And specifically, I'm going to ask you to look at the offense. You recall, I should get a chance to look at that report, whether that's the offense.
I don't know because this isn't what the screen, the dispatch screen would look like. I'd have to look at the exact dispatch screen that was dispatched to me because communications would put in a code like if there's an alleged battery, they would put in a signal 48 for a battery and then send it to me. So I'm going to a battery report, or a battery call, but that can always be changed. It might turn out to be a criminal mischief, so.
So the page that I asked you to look at, is that something that you fill out?
I don't know
Or
what
have you
this
ever seen
information
that?
is because I don't know if this, what the original dispatch screen was, the original code when I was sent to the call. I don't know what the original code was.
All right. Do you know whether you changed the offense designations from one report to the next?
I made it a suspicious incident.
Okay. And it appears from a subsequent report that it's now beyond suspicious incident. Is that right?
Yes, after further investigation.
And you did not change that?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Government approach. Let me show you what I marked for identification as defendant exhibit SS. Date stamp 1790. And if you need to compare it to RR, let me know. Is that a third report that you modified?
No, I didn't put these charges in here because on my report I didn't have these other, like I didn't have the arrested adults on there. I didn't have this other witness. I didn't make this report.
Who would have gone into the computer and changed your report?
It wouldn't be changed. I don't think it would be just added to.
Well, wouldn't you agree that if you add something to the report, it's a change? I'm not trying to explain this.
No, I think it was just, if upon further investigation you find out there's something else or maybe another crime was committed, you can add that to the report, or you can also update it.
But you're not the one who did it.
No.
Someone else had it,
Yes.
and you weren't aware of it.
No.
Did anyone at any time inform you that they changed or added information to your report?
Not that I'm aware of.
May I retrieve?
You may, I'd like to see them, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, let's have them marked RRSS. And then I'd like to look at them, show it.
In looking at RR and SS, from what you can see, does it appear that the listing of charges is what's changed?
Right, it looks like it was added. Excuse me, added.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Did you notice any marks or bruises on Miss Soul?
I did not.
And you say someone else would have been responsible for contacting EMTs, not you.
I didn't call them. Sergeant Allen called them.
From what I can tell, there were 2 sergeants, 3 deputies. How is it that you ended up getting the short straw and had to write the report?
I was asked to write a report by Sergeant Felix.
Okay. Not unusual, sergeant comes on scene, asks one deputy to make a designation?
That is correct.
If I may have just a moment. No further questions.
Thank you, sir. Cross-examination?
Yes. Good morning, Deputy Butler.
Good morning, ma'am.
Before you started to do, well, when you were out there, was it an investigation?
Well, Sergeant Allen and Carson Plank were pretty much out there for the investigation. I was more of like a relief and like figure out what they wanted me to do. I really wasn't sure of my role. So,
Do you generally write a report if you're not investigating anything?
yes, if I'm asked to write the report, usually we'll get the information from the on-scene officers, and then I report what they told me or what information I have.
Did you talk to Miss Soul yourself?
Yes, I did.
All right. Now, before you talked to Miss Soul or did anything in that house, isn't it true that Carson Plank filled you in on all the surrounding details about Frank Bybee's relationship to Miss Soul?
Yes, she did go into detail about that.
Okay. And so before you even talked to Miss Soul, you had already been advised, so to speak, about the background, the backstory, correct?
Yes.
And isn't it true that before you walked into that house and talked to Miss Soul, you were already predisposed to believe that this woman was crazy and making up stories about Bybee?
It's a possibility, but I usually like to go into situations where, okay, you give me information, I can take that. Is this still valid? Because I've been to cases before where the person was suicidal in the past, I Baker acted them, but yet this time they're not suicidal or they're not Baker actable. So every situation is different. You know, I may have the information, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the route I'm taking.
Okay, but my question was, were you predisposed before you walked in there to think that this woman was crazy based on what Plank told you?
Asked and answered.
Overruled.
Sure, it's a possibility.
What do you mean it's a possibility?
Well, I have to base decisions on what I'm told. So not only did I talk to Carson Plank, but I also talked to Mary Ann.
All right,
So-
we'll get to Mary Ann. Isn't it true that Carson Plank, with your knowledge, actually tried to get Bybee on the phone and was talking to him on the way over to the crime scene?
At the time, I did not know she talked to him prior to going to the crime scene. And then I believe Sergeant Allen asked her to call him.
Okay, so the person who was accused of trying to commit murder was alerted about what the victim was saying. Is that a fair assessment of what was going on out there that morning?
Sergeant Allen was the one who asked.
I didn't ask you about Sergeant Allen.
I don't know what was the purpose of that. I don't know.
Well, what do you think the purpose was to call Frank Bybee at 5:30 in the morning and tell him about Marcia Soul?
Objection, one of the things.
Overruled.
What do you think was the purpose to call Frank Bybee and tell him that this crazy lady is accusing him of committing murder, or attempted murder?
I haven't the slightest idea. I hadn't been there. I haven't done the majority of the investigation, so I don't know what Sergeant Allen, maybe he had information that I didn't. I have no idea.
All right. But you agree that Frank Bybee got an update.
At that time, I did not know that.
Do you know it now, sir?
Yes.
Do you agree that he got an update?
Yes, he was given information.
Thank you. Isn't it true that Sergeant Felix told you to write in your report that there was no evidence that a crime occurred?
I think there's audio on that. I'm not sure if he told me that or if, just to write it up as, well, he did say write it up as a suspicious incident.
Isn't it true that he said, just put all that in there and that there was no evidence that it actually occurred? And that's pretty much it.
Right.
Did he say that to you?
Yes.
So you do remember that?
Right. I believe he was standing right next to my car.
All right. And you just testified on direct that you did see blood on Ms. Soul's nightgown.
Yes, there was.
Do you consider blood on a woman's nightgown when she's saying that there was a crime of violence? You don't consider that evidence?
At the time, I believed no crime was committed. At the time, with the information that I had.
Sir, I'm asking you a question.
That's my answer. I didn't think a crime was
I'm
committed.
asking you about
Can't argue
evidence.
with him.
I'm going to sustain the objection. He answered the question. Move on.
Did you learn from a witness on the scene that the car was running?
Yes.
And isn't it true that Miss Soul told you that I opened the garage door and I found the car running at 3 o'clock in the morning, knowing he did it around midnight? He was trying to kill me with carbon monoxide. And you said, where were you when this happened?
Objection,
And
it's not impeachment.
did you,
Judge,
She can ask the question of whether he said it or not. Overruled.
did you hear what I just said? Isn't it true that Miss Soul told you the following? I opened the garage door when I found the car running at 3 o'clock in the morning, knowing he did it around midnight, trying to kill me with carbon monoxide. Actually, she said carbon dioxide. And where were you, you responded, when this happened? And she said, this chair. Now, if a witness,
Can he answer the question you just put to him?
sorry, isn't it true that she said that and you were?
Yes, she said that.
Did Marianne Dombrow tell you that the car was running when you got there?
She did.
Okay. And you don't consider that as important evidence to put in your report?
Well, it was conflicting evidence.
What's
Because-
conflicting about it? She said the car
objection,
was...
Judge, you can't argue with him.
Sustained.
What is conflicting about two people telling you that the car was running?
Because the victim said that she turned it off at 3 a.m. and Marianne said that she turned it off.
I'm going to ask you if reading this statement will help to refresh your recollection.
I listened to the audio yesterday and I heard it and I wrote it down and the victim said that she turned it off.
Don't pull out.
Objection, Judge, you can't.
Mr. Fravely,
But, Your Honor,
come. I see you already have stretched, so I'm not going to give you a break now, so. We'll be taking our break after this witness. All right, you may continue, Ms. Fravely.
yes. Did you have a conversation with Miss Soul just before you left the scene?
Yes,
And did Miss Soul say to you, nothing is out of place. He came and left by the front door. I'm sure he wore rubber gloves the entire time he was here.
yes,
And did you respond, and what color were the gloves?
yes,
What color were the gloves?
yes.
Did Miss Soul tell you blue, bright blue? And he
Yeah.
had on
I'm sorry.
and he had on a dark hat and a baseball hat and a dark jacket. In other words, he didn't want to be seen.
She said,
that?
I heard that on the audio. I didn't hear it at the time. The only thing I heard was the something about the gloves.
All right, well, is there anything that would help you to refresh your recollection that you and she were having this dialogue together at the time that it was audio recorded?
Right, at the time, I didn't remember hearing it, but I listened to the audio and she did say that.
Are you telling me that you do remember it now, sir?
I listened to the audio and that is what she said, yes.
Did you ask her, do you always leave your garage door open? And she said, I opened the garage door when I found the car running at 3 in the morning, knowing he did it around midnight, trying to kill me with carbon monoxide. Did she say that to you?
Yes,
And you asked her, where were you when this happened? Do you remember that, sir?
yes, you just asked me that and she said she was in her chair.
All right. And based upon the fact that this 80-year-old woman called and complained that someone had tried to murder her, a crime of violence, don't you think it was important that you put these facts into your report?
Well, I wasn't sure if a crime was committed at that time based on the information that I had. So, but I did state that to Detective Gaeta, I believe, in her interview about the car running the same day.
And Marianne also told you that the car was running.
Yes, Marianne said the car was running and she shut it off.
Okay. And after the victim told you that someone came into her house with blue gloves and tried to kill her, and he also turned her car on so that she could suffer carbon monoxide poisoning, you called that a suspicious incident in your report, did you not?
Yes, that would require further investigation.
Required by whom?
Detective Bureau.
The Detective Bureau told you to put that in as a suspicious incident?
No, they would be the ones to investigate further.
Who told you to put it in as a suspicious incident?
Sergeant Felix.
And he also told you to put in there that there was no evidence that a crime occurred, correct?
That's what we said in the last question also, yes.
I have nothing further.
Thank you. Redirect?
Despite what would be told to you by Sergeant Felix, if you believe that there was evidence that a crime was committed, would you be obligated to put that in your report?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our break now, so you are all excused. We'll take our 15-minute break. Why don't we make it 20 minutes this morning, because I have a little legal stuff I need to do first. So make it 20 minutes, and we'll see you back here at about 25 minutes past 10.
All right, sir, please.
Deputy, you remain on the stand, please. Please be seated. Deputy, I see you. Please have a seat. Deputy, I see you've got some notes, and I see a reference to the fact that you reviewed the video or audio.
It was the audio
What audio did you review?
that Deputy Reynolds had,
Right, so it would be the, what's that called, what's the system
a
called?
watch guard,
Watch guard. And when did you do that?
last night.
Last night. How did you know to do that?
Because there was audio in the beginning. I knew that he was recording the whole thing. I've been trying to get the video, and he finally had it. So
He had it last night?
I had been asking him for it if he was able to recover the video, because I can't go on the system and recover it. I can't get a copy of it.
So watch guard records each unit's.
Right. I don't have a watch guard system in my car, so but you can get the audio or if there's video also.
So he provided that to you last night?
Yes, I listened to it.
And were you both working last night?
Yes.
So how did he know to get that to you last night?
I asked him if he was ever able to get the video or the audio for that.
And he had a copy of that audio?
Yes, on his computer.
So it's stored on the computer?
No, it automatically gets downloaded to the server. So once you get up to North District or Fleet, then all the data gets uploaded automatically.
Alright, so it's already up, it's uploaded to the server, so in order to get, for him to get that, he would have had to download it from the server back to his unit.
Right, I don't know if the individual operator of the unit can get a copy of that, or if you'd have to ask a supervisor, I don't know.
And it wasn't up until last night that you were provided with a copy of that.
Correct. I have been asking for it from the get-go. I think I even asked Detective Gaeta if she had the audio so I can review everything prior to trial.
Did you talk to anyone about yesterday's proceedings and the fact that the audio recording was an issue here?
Not about audio recording, no, because I had been asking for the audio recording from the get-go, like I said.
Any questions?
Now from the defense unit.
You knew you were going to be called as a defense witness in this case?
Objection, Judge, not a defense witness, just a witness.
It's called by the defense. You can rephrase if you'd like.
Did you know that the defense was going to call you as a witness in this case?
I suspected that when I got a phone call from Captain Walsh.
And when was that?
Can I refer to my phone?
Yes, if it would help to refresh your recollection.
Voicemail was left on Tuesday.
On Tuesday?
Yes.
And today's Thursday. Did you...
And yes, so yesterday morning is when I listened to it.
Okay, so yesterday morning. Did you speak to any members of defense counsel and say...
Wait. I'm not going down that road. I had a specific issue in my mind, so I'm not going down.
I just have one more question, please. Did Sergeant Felix also get a copy of that WatchGuard video?
He listened to it also, yes.
Anybody else?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
When did he do that?
Last night also. Yesterday.
Thank you. All right, you may step down.
Oh, thank you.
Is he subject to recall?
Not by the state.
Defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, sir, you are released from your subpoena. You may go about your usual course of business. And we will take a recess at this time.
All rise, this court will be in recess.
Court reporter, we are back on the record.
Next witness, Your Honor, is EMT Waltrip.
Waltrip.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir.
Andrew Waltrip.
And let's bring the jury back in before Mr. Waltrip comes in.
That helps.
Jury and Rob, thank you.
All rise, jurors entering.
Please be seated. And call the next witness, Mr. Waltrip.
Andrew Waltrip.
Andrew Waltrip.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
I'd ask you to speak up a little bit if you can. This nice lady's taking everything down. Can you just state your name for the record?
Andrew Waltrip.
So what do you do for a living?
Firefighter paramedic for Sarasota County Fire Department.
Okay, how long have you done that job?
8 years with Sarasota County, 2 years with Northport Fire Department before that.
Can you give us a little bit about your background in terms of your training? What kind of training do you have?
I'm a field training officer for Sarasota County for about 4 years. ACLS instructor, PALS instructor. That's most of it.
Can you certified EMT?
Paramedic.
A paramedic. How do you get that position? How do you get that certification?
EMT school, then paramedic school. Paramedic school is about an extra year after that, and then probably 6 months to a year of field training before you get released.
Okay. Let me call your attention to January of this year. Did you have the opportunity to go out to a property on Brockton Lane?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you recall what date that was approximately?
The 12th. I just recently looked at the report, so yeah, the 12th.
January 12th. Okay. Do you know what time it was approximately?
Early in the morning, coming off shift, so I think it was around 6 a.m.
Okay. And was anybody with you? Did you go by yourself or with someone else?
Always with someone else. My partner was Ken Tuggle that day.
Okay. And when you arrived at the property, what did you see?
Multiple cop cars out front.
So the police were already there?
SSO vehicles, yes, sir.
Okay. So Sarasota Sheriff's Department?
Yes, sir, yeah.
And then what did you next?
Entered the scene. We were told we were
Let me
evaluating.
stop you there, and I hate to
Yes, sir.
interrupt you. I'm
No.
a big believer in not interrupting, but I just want to be clear. How did you get into the property? You tell me how you...
Walked from we usually pull the rescue up to the driveway so that just a little pass so that we can pull the stretcher out and get out. We were told, I think we were told that it was an evaluation, so we did not bring the stretcher in. I think we walked in with we have a blue bag with basic EMS equipment that we take in. So I think we walked in with that. And that was it. From driveway, there's only one entrance up from the front.
Let me ask you, do you have any independent memory that when you walked from the driveway, did you see the garage open or closed? Do you remember?
I don't necessarily. I want to say open, but I honestly don't know. I know the area where all those townhomes are or duplexes, and I don't even know if there are garages or if they're open carports.
Yeah, it's not going to be helpful. It's
Okay.
suspect.
Gotcha.
All right, now, when you went into the property, so strike that. Had you been to the property?
We have been there previously, yes.
Why?
Other EMS calls, other medical calls.
Okay. Involving this same person?
Same patient, yes, sir.
Okay, that would be Miss Marshall Soul?
Yeah.
Okay. And on how many occasions do you think you've been there?
It's speculation, but at least a few.
Objection if it's speculation.
Sorry. Yeah, I can't. I don't remember
Okay.
exactly. Run a lot of calls. A lot of calls.
All right, now, so when you went in, what did you see?
Multiple SSO deputies in there, and then she was sitting upright in a chair.
And you approached her?
We approached her, yes. I think she was pretty close to the door. It didn't take long.
Okay, when you approached her, did you see any blood on her face?
I don't remember specifically any bleeding, active bleeding. In my report, I wrote that she had an abrasion on her lip. I remember that. A little redness, and I think there may have been maybe a dried blood speck on her shirt.
Right.
But that's all I can remember
Any
seeing.
signs of violence or trauma?
Nothing extreme. As I remember it, it was fairly slight injuries.
Okay. And, but you don't know what could have caused that?
I'm not a forensic specialist. That's not my job. But medically, it could have been multiple.
Objection.
Sir, if there's an objection, just stop for a minute, let me make a ruling.
Sure.
Okay? Just saying.
All right. Did she say anything to you?
Besides my questioning to her, which is what we normally, we follow.
Tell us what those questions are.
Usually, first off, pretty much, do you want to go to the hospital?
What was the response to that?
No, multiple times to offers of transport. I know that she was stating someone had attacked her. I don't even know if she specifically told me who. She just kept saying that over and over again.
Did you see any evidence around you of that?
Not that I can remember specifically.
Okay. And then what else did you ask her?
Medical history. We had basic questions. We ask, what she was doing before this happened. We ask her if she lost consciousness. We ask her if she's having a hard time breathing, if she has chest pain. Just a general set of questions we ask almost all patients.
Okay. Did she tell you what she was doing before? Do you recall?
I think she said that she was sleeping before someone, like I said, she said attacked her, but that's all that I got.
And that attack happened recently? You don't know?
When the questions start...
At least let me finish, Your Honor. I appreciate that.
No, then
Objection is sustained. Re-ask the question.
Sir.
Mhm.
During that discussion, did you evaluate her physically?
Yes, sir.
Tell me how you did that.
Visually, my partner took vital signs. I think a blood glucose was also taken.
Do you recall what those vitals were?
They were within normal limits. If they weren't within normal limits, I would have to consult an EMS captain or someone higher to allow her to not go to the hospital. If everything's within normal limits, she can refuse legally on her own.
BP, blood pressure within normal.
Yes, sir.
What else did you do in terms of the physical value?
Besides that, like I said, it was a visual evaluation. There was no other. She denied any other injuries. I think in my report I wrote at the very end that she denied trauma, but I meant to say any other trauma. So she didn't have any other complaints for me to take any clothes off and evaluate any other injuries. So.
And she didn't complain about anything else anywhere in the body?
No, sir. No, sir.
Did you feel that she needed to go to the hospital?
That's not my decision to make. I offer that to every patient to transport, and she denied multiple times. I think I remember her not wanting to deal with us much. She wanted to talk to the cops, and she just wanted us to evaluate her and be free of us.
And do you have a memory when she was talking to the cops about?
Not necessarily. Just someone that attacked her.
How long do you think you were there for?
My guess, probably 10 to 15 minutes, probably closer to 15 total would be probably about accurate.
It would be fair that it was you, not Mr. Tuttle, who was really...
objection leading.
Sustained.
Did Mr. Tuttle evaluate her?
He was there also. Ken is an EMT, I'm the paramedic. I lead the call and the questioning, and then he did as I remember, he did the vital signs and the blood glucose.
It's mainly you.
Yes, sir. I'm the one that questioned her and talked to her.
1 minute. You asked about whether she lost consciousness. What was her answer?
No.
No.
Thank you. Ms. Fragley?
Good morning, Mr. Waltrip.
Good morning.
Do you remember giving an interview with one of the detectives from the Sarasota Sheriff's Office in this case?
Yes, I do. A few months back, maybe more.
And do you remember that they talked to you specifically, or he talked to you specifically about any injuries that you had seen when you went there to respond?
I'm sure that he did.
Well, if you don't remember, I want you to tell me.
Specifically, I don't remember, what all the questions were, but yes, I'm sure that he did ask me. I vaguely remember. I don't know exact questions. But yes.
I'm not asking you if you can recite the exact question.
Okay.
What I'm asking you is, when you talked to the detective in this case, did he try to get some information out of you about the injuries that the victim had sustained?
Yes.
Okay, it's not a trick question.
No, I understand, yes. Yes, we talked about injuries, I'm sure.
And did he also show you photographs of the injuries?
I do remember there being one photograph.
Right. And when you looked at that photograph, isn't it true that you agreed that although the injuries on the photograph looked more developed than what you had seen that morning, they were still consistent with what you had seen that morning? The photographs were consistent with what you had seen that morning?
I remember saying that the photograph looked more severe than what I had reported on in my report initially.
All right. Well, do you think anything would help to refresh your recollection about what you actually said?
Sure.
Page 6. Page 7 as well. Mr. Waltrip, I just want you to look at the highlighted areas on page 6 and also on page 7. Just take your time, and after you've read those, just read those to yourself.
Okay.
Signal to me that you're through.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Isn't it true that the detective asked you, after showing you those photographs, is that a pretty fair and accurate depiction of what she looked like at the time of day? And you responded, yeah, it looks a little more bruised and a little more red than what I remember, correct?
Yes, it does say that.
And then you went on to say, but that's about it.
I did say that, and I also mentioned in there that the nose was different. Oh, that's fine.
You said, and that's about it. And you said, maybe like the bruising, the bruising parts and even the lip here, I don't remember that. Close though. And you went on to say, this abrasion here, like I said, maybe on her nose, like I was saying, and I see that now, like right here. And you went on to say, and that's what I remember is just those little injuries. Do you remember saying that, or would you like to look at this again?
No, I did say that. There was one line on there that, though, on the first page that mentions her nose being, that maybe that was different.
Okay, yes. And then you continued to say, well, maybe the lighting's a little more accurate from what I remember seeing. And do you agree that that's what you said?
Yes, yeah, I remember there being the picture was taken with a flash directly in her face as opposed to being in a not dimly lit, but a not bright room at 6 in the morning.
Well, wouldn't it be important for you when you go to someone's house at 6 o'clock in the morning and the room is dimly lit to make sure that the lights are...
We did shine our flashlight on her face, as we usually do.
Okay, so then the lighting had nothing to do with it?
A flash is different when you take pictures. It depends on how it's exposed and everything. Development of the photo.
Right. So the lighting, as you explained here, was not adequate for you to see all her injuries?
In person or in the photo?
In person, sir.
In person, I used a flashlight. That's what I said.
All right. And you were also asked about the gown that she was wearing, the nightie, correct? And you were able to identify that there was blood on the nightgown.
Yes, ma'am. I think I said that earlier, too.
And you also said, but kind of how her face looks here, referring to the photograph,
Mhm.
is more what I remember. You had to kind of look. You had to get up close, kind of like this photo, to see anything, any of the abrasions and wounds. Now, if you're evaluating someone, an 80-year-old woman who's complaining of a violent crime, why wouldn't you get up close?
I think that's what it says I did. I said I got up close. You had to get up close.
Well, why don't we look at this kid?
You had to kind of look. You had to get up close, like this photo, to see.
But you said that the photo was more developed than what you saw. So how do you reconcile?
That is saying to see the injuries when I was in person, I had to get up close to see them. That is what that says.
So you did see, so when you got up close, you saw injuries?
In my report, the injuries are listed.
Let him answer it, let him provide his answer.
I reported the injuries I saw in my report.
Sir, are you telling us that what you said here to the detective was that when you got up close, you saw the injuries? Because I don't know how to interpret this otherwise. Is it
The injuries that I
funny that I made you laugh?
Well, I just feel like we're going around in circles. The injuries that I reported are in my report.
Paramedic.
Hold on. Judge,
When
Sorry.
I've got this, Mr. Lake.
thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fravelig, A, please allow the witness to complete his answers. You, Mr. Waltrip,
Sir.
your answers should be confined to the question as opposed to going on a
Okay.
narrative.
Yes, sir.
And third, I don't want any argument, Ms. Fravelig, back and forth with the witness. Let the witness give his answer, and then you can ask the next question. Please proceed.
Did you notice that there were any pill bottles scattered around the floor?
I noticed in my interview when you gave me that highlighted sheets that I mentioned that there was a pill bottle, empty pill bottle on the floor.
Counsel after you saw it in disarray or anything else. Now, does that refresh your recollection that there were pills scattered on the floor?
Yes, that did refresh my recollection.
I'm showing you what have been marked as States Exhibit 5, A, B, C, D, and E. And how many photographs were you shown by the detective?
I don't remember specifically, but one or two.
All right. Point over these and tell me which ones you looked at.
I think it was only the close-ups. I think it might have been those two. I'm not positive, though.
For the record, the witness is referring to States 5D and 5E.
Mr. Waltrip, those injuries that are shown in that photograph, are they consistent, albeit more developed, than the ones that you saw when you were there at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning?
Overruled.
I'm gonna be honest. Trying to recollect exactly what her face looked like from January is very difficult for me.
But in your statement, you said, it's true that in your statement, you said these injuries were consistent with what you saw. However, these photographs were more
that the injuries were more developed over time.
If that's what I said in my statement, then that's what I
Is
meant.
there anything that would help you to refresh your recollection of what you said in your statement, sir?
If this was months ago, maybe.
Sir, would your statement, your very own words, help you to remember what you said?
I just read it. That's what I said. If that's what I said in my statement, then yes, ma'am.
Based on your medical training and your experience as an EMT, isn't it true that as time progresses, when someone receives an injury, that the injuries bloom and develop more and become more pronounced?
Objection. Your vote.
No, overruled.
Generally, yes, that's how injuries work.
Pardon?
Yes, generally, yes, that's how injuries work. You have the initial injury and then it gets worse.
Nothing further.
Pick up your exhibits if you would. Mr. Lake, and just wait a minute and allow her to do that. Turn the lights back on.
Mr. Waltrip,
Yes, sir.
when you said developed in the interview with the police detective, much later, what did you mean by that?
I meant that they looked worse than I remembered seeing in person.
Okay. You saw something on January 12th at 6 a.m.
Yes, sir.
And you have no information on anybody else that took a photograph at 5:36 in the morning.
No, sir.
You were not shown that photograph by the detective.
No, sir.
And nothing else, thank you.
Subject to recall?
No.
No.
All right, thank you. You may step down, sir. Thank you very much. You're released from your subpoena.
Thank you.
Detective Gaeta.
Detective Gaeta.
Yes, sir.
All right, Detective Gaeta, recall. Swear back and show.
Raise your right hand.
I do.
Good morning, ma'am. You're still under oath? When were you first assigned to perform an investigation on the exploitation of elderly?
January 9th, 2017.
And what do you have in front of
I have my folder.
you? Which has what?
It has a yellow pad of paper, and it has the transcripts for Marcia Soul and Kay Trishler.
Okay, who asked you to bring those?
Nobody asked me to.
All right, can you close the folder so if you need to, let us know?
Absolutely.
Okay. January 9th, who asked you to do that?
My captain, Captain Walsh.
And once you received that request by Captain Walsh, it took you a couple, 2-3 days to get there?
To get where?
The Soul's house.
Yeah,
January 12th. It's actually the first time you put eyes on her, right?
correct.
So you got the request to investigate this on the 9th. You show up 3 days later on the 12th, correct?
On the third day.
And when you showed up on the 12th, you told us that you got there about 11-ish
10.
at 10,
10.
and you got there with Detective Riley.
Yes.
And between 10 and 12, 20 something, when you first started the tape recording, Were you interviewing Ms. Soul?
Not the entire time.
What were you doing?
I was contacting my immediate supervisor to advise him of the situation.
What else?
I interviewed Marcia Soul, contacted my sergeant, spoke with Sergeant Riley,
You
requested
agreed with
forensic.
me
I'm
that
sorry.
you were there for about 2.5 hours before you turned on the tape recording, correct?
Correct.
And the interview that you had with Ms. Soul was not on recording.
The original conversation was not.
And how long was that original conversation?
Maybe about an hour.
And why didn't you record that?
At the time, I didn't know what it was that she was alleging with regards to the statements she had made to us. So it was more of a conversation to determine what exactly was going on and determine what course of action I needed to take.
Did you inform her of any specifics of the investigation before you turned the tape on?
The specifics of which investigation? The exploitation?
Either.
We discussed the exploitation.
And in fact, what you did before you turned the tape on is you told her about these checks that had been received at the sheriff's office, right?
We discussed the checks.
And you told her about them, right?
I asked her if I could show her the copies of the checks.
Prior to you showing her the copies of the checks, had she referenced these checks?
No.
Any conversation whatsoever that she said, Mr. Bybee stole checks?
No.
So before you turned the tape on, why did you decide to tell her about these checks?
Because that was the original reason why I was going there that morning. So since we were discussing what she wanted to talk about that had occurred that morning, I wanted to talk to her about the checks as well. It all involved the same individual.
Is there a reason you didn't want that on recording?
No, it is on recording. We discussed the checks on recording.
And you discussed them before you recorded. That's what I'm asking you.
We discussed it beforehand.
And I'm asking you, is there a reason that you didn't want that discussion on recording?
It wasn't about wanting it or not wanting it on recording.
Is there anything that kept you from recording that initial discussion?
No.
At some point in time, actually near the end of the first part of your interview, Ms. Soul asked you to turn the tape off, right?
She did.
And then she provided you some additional information that was then not on recording, correct?
I don't know that she necessarily provided me information. To be honest, I don't really recall what we discussed about that. Anything that we discussed during that first initial hour was then discussed during the sworn recorded statement.
Unusual for a witness to ask you to turn off a tape?
Not necessarily.
And typically when they ask you to turn off the tape, it's because they don't want information memorialized or recorded, right?
Depends on the situation.
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
In this particular case, why did Ms. Soul ask you to turn the tape off?
To be honest with you, I don't really recall what we discussed afterwards, but at the end of the conversation that we were having, or the end of the interview, I concluded the interview, so it wasn't part of what we were originally discussing.
Well, actually, you turned the tape back on,
Objection, leading.
correct?
Objection, leading.
Did you ever turn the tape back on?
I turned the recorder on.
A second time.
Yes,
And for what reason?
to continue the interview that we had originally started at 12:30.
What was the gap between ending the first tape and starting the second tape?
I would have to review my notes to see the times that are on there.
You have those?
I do.
Can you take a look? Let
Sure.
us know.
The first interview concluded at 1 o'clock. The second interview began at 2:11 p.m.
So what did you talk about for that hour and 11 minutes?
We didn't necessarily speak about anything. It wasn't about interviewing. There were other things that were going on that we needed to discuss. The supervisor that was there and the forensic technicians that were there. It wasn't all about just speaking.
All right, jurors entering.
Please be seated, folks. Sorry for the delay, ladies and gentlemen. There are times when even I have to go to the book and find out what I should do. That's what I just had to do in this particular situation. As we worked our way through the legal issues involved, and I'll allow Mr. Beard to continue his cross-examination, or his direct examination, I should say.
Yes, sir. Detective, did you, or were you told by Ms. Soul that when Mr. Bybee was in the house, he brought her a glass of water?
Yes.
And you were told by Ms. Soul that he handed it to her?
Yes.
And then the next thing that happens, she's being suffocated.
Correct.
Your, were you ever told what Mr. Bybee had on his hands?
Yes.
What?
Blue gloves.
Did she ever tell you that he was barehanded at any time?
No.
Did you request of Mr. Wagner to check around the chair or on the rug for the presence of blood?
Yes.
Could I seek counsel?
Yes.
Please, thank you. This is only going to take 1 minute, folks.
Detective, why don't you list for us everything you asked Mr. Wagner to do?
I don't think I could list every single thing that I had asked him to do. I don't know that I necessarily recall everything that I had asked. It was a very fluid scene.
Tell us what you recall.
I didn't specifically ask him to do anything. I explained to him what the call was. I explained what her allegations were, and there were discussions about what we needed to do at the scene at that time.
So your testimony is you never asked Mr. Wagner to process anything specifically inside that house? Not once?
I don't know that I guess I'm not sure about the terminology. I didn't specifically process as in what? As in process for latents, process for blood, processes and take photographs?
All the above.
Yes.
Anything that crime scene does.
Well, of course, I directed him to do certain things that I felt important to document.
And I'm asking you again, please tell us what that was.
Photographs of the interior and exterior of the home, photographs of the victim of Marcia Soul and her injuries, photographs of the area that she was seated in, photographs of the chair, of the floor, the garage, the kitchen, the dining area. There were requests for photographs for the interior and exterior of the home by the window. there were swabs taken where there had been blood stains.
Anything else?
I'm sure I don't remember at this time.
Once you completed your interview with Ms. Soul, fair to say she gave you a host of information. Is that right?
Yes.
What was your responsibility once you received this host of information? What do you do next?
I confer with my supervisors, and at that point in time, we have a conversation about what our game plan is going to be. What do we do next? What are our next steps?
And you then put in place the next steps, correct?
Correct.
Do you then direct other detectives to follow up on the next steps that you've decided?
I don't assign detectives to do the things that need to be done. In conversations with supervisors, we determine what is important and what we think needs to be addressed, and then other detectives get assigned to assist me with that. But I don't specifically go out and pick detectives to go and do those certain things.
Do you ask detectives to do things for you?
At times I've asked detectives to do things, but when it comes to certain tasks, that's something that's typically done through the supervisors.
Detective Caskey, did you ask him to do anything?
Sergeant Caskey?
Sergeant Caskey?
No, I don't specifically ask them to do anything. Again, we have a discussion about what needs to be done, and the supervisors decide who is going to do what, and...
It's your testimony, you never asked Sergeant Caskey to do that?
Nothing specific that I recall.
Okay. Did you request to take the time to do it?
Again, I didn't delegate any tasks to
I'm
any...
just asking you, either you did or you didn't. Did you ask to take the time to do anything in this case?
No.
One of the things that you wanted done or requested done was to go and pull all surveillance cameras on the route between Mr. Bybee's house and Ms. Soul's house. Is that true?
That is true.
And who came up with that idea?
I don't recall. Again, this is a conversation.
I don't need, you've already made that clear.
Okay.
Did you ask anybody to do that?
I did not ask anybody to pull the video surveillance.
Once that task was completed, being the case agent, did you review any video surveillance?
No.
In fact, being the case agent, have you seen any video surveillance beyond the ATMs showing Mr. Bybee leaving his house and going to the station?
No.
There was a request that ATM surveillance still photos be acquired. Did you do that?
Submit the requests? No.
Do you know who did?
Yes.
Who?
Detective Darby.
And once those surveillance videos were acquired by the sheriff's office, did you review them?
I did.
All of them?
No.
Why not?
Because I wasn't assigned to the investigation into the fraud.
So there were some things that you were assigned to investigate and other things you were assigned not to investigate, or that you weren't assigned to?
Correct. My assignment, or what I was investigated to, what I was assigned to investigate, was the exploitation and the incident that occurred on January 12th at 5:30 in the morning. That's what I was assigned to investigate. The other things that we learned later on, such as the fraudulent uses of the ATM cards, that was assigned to another detective to investigate.
And what detective was assigned to that?
That was Detective Lefevre.
Did you have communication with Detective Lefevre about about his findings, about your findings?
We had conversations, but again, that wasn't the focus of my investigation.
So since the focus of your investigation was financial, is that fair? One part of it.
A portion of it, yes.
You were, and you did, request all of the financial records from the various banks that Ms. Soul did business, correct?
Correct.
Remember what banks those were?
I remember the two of them, the Nassau Federal Credit Union, and then Wells Fargo.
About Chase or Citi?
Those, yes, her credit cards.
The banking information that you subpoenaed, you certainly had the ability to request any and all canceled checks, correct? Written by Ms. Soul, correct?
Correct.
You did not make that request, did you?
Specifically for canceled checks?
Yes, ma'am.
No.
Were you responsible for sending handwriting exemplars to FDLE for analysis?
Yes.
In fact, were you the one who was responsible for going to Ms. Soul and having her perform handwriting exemplars?
Yes.
Specifically, did anybody go with you or were you all by yourself?
It was me.
Could you describe for the jury what you had her do in order to come up with these exemplars?
Sure. There's a template from which we had Marcia, Ms. Soul, write on the templates of the checks the same way the checks that had come to the sheriff's office were written. For example, there was a check written to Frank Bybee. I showed her the check and I told her to write it the exact same way. So we wanted the date filled out the same way, the name filled out the same way, the amount filled out the same way, as far as the text of it. And we did that 4 times for each check. So there were 4 checks and 4 samples that she wrote out for each check.
See if I understand what you just told us.
Sure.
You handed her those checks side by side and asked her to write out what was on those checks.
I didn't hand her the checks.
Didn't you just say that?
No. I had photocopies of the checks. I showed her the checks that we were going to be writing in the templates.
The photocopy.
The photocopies. I did not hand her the checks. You said the checks.
You laid them on the counter. In other words, what I'm saying is when you asked her to fill this out, she had a copy, a photocopy of the photocopy of the check right next to her.
I didn't leave the photocopy down for her to look at. I showed it to her, and then I recited to her what was written on the check, and that's what I wanted her to write. So if the name on the check is Jane Doe, I want her to write Jane Doe. I wanted her to write the dates the way the dates were written on the check, and I would read that to her, and she would write it. I did not leave the check or the photocopy of the check next to her so that she could look at both of them and write it that way.
How many times have you done handwriting?
This was the first one that I had done.
Who taught you the protocols for doing handwriting exemplars?
I wasn't taught to do them.
That's just how you decided to do it.
I followed the instructions that were on the packet.
Now, you were also asked to produce what is known as known writings, correct?
Correct.
Would you agree with me that some of the best known writings would be canceled checks?
It's a good example.
But you didn't provide any canceled checks.
No.
In fact, the only thing you provided for analysis to FDLE was a single check that was recovered from Mr. Bybee's residence and the handwriting exemplars that you just described, right?
No.
What else did you get?
We submitted the check for the $1,000 that Marcia said that she had given to him, that she had written,
That I just referenced.
correct?
What else?
The copies of the other checks, the 4 checks that were in question. And then I submitted
I was asking about known.
my apologies, driver's license. And, I'm sorry?
What else?
And a form for a social security application, which were obtained through the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Were you ever informed that FDLE did not get sufficient known samples in order to complete their handwriting analysis?
They sent a request asking for additional samples, or another one, which is when we sent that check, the single check from Marcia Soul for $1,000.
And knowing that canceled checks would also give them those known signatures, writings of Ms. Soul, you never bothered to go get them.
I did not obtain canceled checks.
You completed what is called a probable cause affidavit, correct?
Correct?
And the probable cause affidavit was used by you for what?
To charge the defendant with the crimes that I charged him with.
And at the time you completed that probable cause affidavit, had you received the video surveillance from the ATMs?
No, but again, I didn't charge him with the,
Ma'am, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking at the time you did the probable cause affidavit, had you received the video from the ATMs?
no.
The information that you put in the charging document, the probable cause affidavit, if you had not reviewed the videos of the ATMs, where did you get the information to come up with those charges?
Which charges are you referring to?
The use of the ATMs, ma'am.
I didn't write those PCAs.
Okay.
I already explained that to you. Detective Lefevre handled the fraud. I handled the exploitation, and I handled the attempted homicide.
So Detective Lefevre would be the best one that could tell us that. Is that right?
He could speak to the ATM videos.
And he's the one who then completed the probable cause affidavit for those counts?
For the use of the ATMs.
Yes,
Correct.
not you.
Correct.
During your interview with Ms. Soul, at any time did she express to you how she felt about Mr. Bybee?
She did.
Was there a time when you cut her off and told her, stop?
Perhaps.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know what it is you're referencing.
You have the interview with you?
I do.
Take a look at page 138 to 139. That's page 17 and 18. If you need me to direct where you are, I can do that.
I'm at 17 and 18.
Okay.
I'm sorry, was there, repeat the question, please.
Your Honor, may I approach to direct the witness?
$17 and 18? Okay, thank you.
Counsel, can you please tell me which interview?
First you, specifically paid stand,
Just tell me the page number, please.
17 and 18?
Thank you. And where on the page am I looking? Thank you. Okay, got it.
Okay,
See what I'm referencing?
I do.
She was telling you good things about Mr. Bybee. Am I wrong or correct?
She was discussing his migraines.
Right? And in fact, page 138, page 17, she says,
Objection, improper impeachment.
I'm trying to refresh her recollection there.
Overruled.
Frank's a very nice, lovely man. So surprised at all these things happening. She goes on. And you say, stop it. Right?
The word stop it is in there, but not in the context in which you're saying it.
You would agree with me that the words stop it come right after she's talking about all the good things of Mr. Bybee, right?
No, she's talking about his migraines. She's not saying anything about how nice he is or any nice things. And in fact, if you go above that, where she was discussing the nice things that you're referencing, she also mentions that he was overwhelming and controlling,
And he also
literally
says,
controlling my breathing last night.
also says he couldn't have been kinder, more dear to me in the sense of helping and always wanting to help.
Till it got to be overwhelming and he was controlling my breathing, for God's sake, literally controlling my breathing last night.
And then you say, stop it.
No, sir.
Okay.
She continues on and says, what was I going to say? Oh, and I truly believe, and she goes on to talk about what was causing him to make ridiculous, sick decisions had to do with the fact that he has migraine headaches 2 to 5 times a week. So, yes, all of those things are on those 2 pages. No, they are not in the order in which you're trying to explain them to be.
Actually, the correct order is as follows. What I was just going to say, oh, and I truly believe that what is causing him to make these ridiculous sick decisions, as you said, has to do with migraines. She then goes on and says, now I don't happen to be a sufferer, so I can't even begin to feel what he feels. But people tell me. She then goes on to say on the next page, page 18 at the top, that she tells him, quote, you've got to quit whatever you're doing, go to some hospital or doctor who says that they made some move towards a cure, because it's the only way you're going to get it. You cannot live life this way with 2 to 5 times a week and then that's when you say, stop it. I am correct in that, correct?
That's what it says, yes.
Yes. Now, did you see, while you were present, blood smeared on the floor around Miss Soul's chair?
No.
Did you see, while you were present, blood on the carpet by Miss Soul's chair?
No.
Once you received information, as we talked about, did you then go back and request dispatch telephone calls that Miss Soul would have made to Sarasota Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
You draw your attention to December 20th, 2016. did you request calls that were made by Ms. Soul to the sheriff's office on that day?
No.
Do you recall listening and creating a transcript of the call she made that day to Detective Riley?
We made a transcript of the voicemail message
Right.
to Sergeant Riley
Right.
off of his phone, correct?
Which would have required you to go and get that recorded, correct?
Sergeant Riley recorded that message off of his phone using his digital recorder.
And then you put it into a transcript.
Put it in a disc and we sent it out to be transcribed.
Do you know how many times through your investigation as the lead investigator in this case, Ms. Soul called the sheriff's office dispatch or 911 on December 20th, 2016?
I don't.
Did you not look into that or you don't recall?
I don't know how many times she called on the 20th.
Have you seen transcriptions of those calls?
From December 20th, when she called to complain about Frank Bybee?
Yes, ma'am.
No.
That wasn't part of your investigation?
No, I don't recall getting that part of it.
Okay.
The complaint, no. We spoke to the sergeants, the supervisors who took the complaint.
Okay. Who was it that was responsible for creating the transcriptions or requesting the transcriptions of those calls, if it wasn't you?
There's a company that the sheriff's office was using to obtain transcriptions.
And did you make a request of that company to make transcriptions?
I did not make the specific and direct request.
Do you know who did?
No, I don't know who the company was. That was something that supervisors handled. I was advised on how to submit them, and then they went to the company.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it appears that this, maybe I'm using a wrong word, but this vast investigation included multiple detectives.
Objection.
Multiple detectives, right?
Yes.
Not just you. Can you give us an estimation of how many detectives were involved in this entire investigation?
Specifically to the investigation, there were several of us.
What does that mean? How many?
More than 2, less than 5?
Pardon me?
More than 2, less than 5?
Well, let's see if we can do. Detective Top, correct?
Correct.
Detective Butler.
Correct.
Sergeant Cass.
Yes.
Sergeant Ryan.
He was part of the internal investigation, not the criminal investigation.
Okay. Detective Butler. All right.
Yes.
Yourself. Correct?
Correct.
Sergeant Sherman.
Correct.
We're at 7.
Well, you said detectives. You didn't say supervisors.
Okay, give me supervisors too.
Sergeant, the immediate group of us that were working on it was Sergeant Shirtliff and Sergeant Caskey, myself, Detective Tuck, Detective Lefevre, Detective Darby was requested to do some work for us. If you want internal investigation too, then we had Sergeant Riley. Those were the most direct people that assisted in the investigation.
And as part of your investigation, you then went and interviewed many folks, not supervisors, but many deputies in this case.
I did.
You interviewed all of the deputies that first arrived on January 11th.
On January
On
12th.
12th, in the early morning of January 12th.
Yes.
Correct? And you interviewed the 2 deputies that were there the day before, on the 11th, 4:32.
I did.
You then went back and interviewed the deputies that were there on December 20th with the initial complaint, correct?
There were no deputies that were there on the initial complaint.
So when Ms. Soul made her initial complaint on December 20th, you're not aware that Deputy DeCapo went there?
I'm aware that Sergeant DeCapua went there, but well, there's a difference, and you're asking me if there were deputies that responded to a call. And there weren't deputies that responded to a call. There was no call screen for that. They did not go out as a call for service.
There was a call screen for Sergeant DeCapo, wasn't there?
For Sergeant DeCapua, not a call screen for patrol to respond. There's a difference.
So she went out and interviewed Ms. Soul, and you interviewed her about that, correct?
I did.
And then, following up to that, Sergeant Legg, Lieutenant Barshinger, went a couple days later, correct?
They went the next day.
You did not interview them, or did you?
Sergeant Legg and Lieutenant Barshinger?
That's what I asked.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so you interviewed them,
I did.
and then you were aware that Internal Affairs went out, interviewed Ms. Soul,
Correct.
Sergeant Riley, and Warren Trigger,
Yes.
Lieutenant, right?
Sergeant.
Sergeant. He went out also?
He went with Sergeant Riley.
Did you interview any of them?
No.
If I may have a moment here. Did you view any of the ATM videos?
I did.
If that was not part of your investigation, why did you do that?
Why wouldn't I? It's something that's involving the same defendant that I'm investigating, and it's part of the case as a whole with the same victim.
So when you viewed these videos, did you notice that some of the ATM transactions were in fact not Mr. Bybee?
I did.
Were you able to identify who the other individuals were that used Marcia Soul's credit card that showed up on other video surveillance?
I identified one of them,
Who?
Eloise Harris.
And according to you in your investigation, who's Eloise Harris?
She's a caretaker for Marcia Soul.
And how many times did you view Eloise Harris utilizing Miss Soul's ATM?
I believe there were two.
Did you view anybody else that utilized Miss Soul's ATM that was not Mr. Bybee?
There was a still image of one where Marcia Soul was using the card.
Did you ask, you being the lead detective, Miss Soul about ATM transactions, or was that Detective Todd?
Well, it would have been Detective Lefevre, not
I'm
Detective
sorry,
Todd.
Detective Lefevre.
Did I ask her about them in regards to...
Who did?
I asked her about whether or not she had given Eloise the card, and we had a discussion about it. It wasn't a sworn recorded statement, but it was a conversation.
Were you made aware of part of your investigation that Miss Soul says anybody who used my ATM to take money had to have been Frank Bybee?
And I'm sorry, I don't quite understand that question. Could you please repeat
Are
it?
you advised by Miss Soul that she said anybody who used my ATM card or any transaction using my ATM has to be Frank Bybee?
No, because she confirmed with me when I asked her about the ones with regards to Eloise, whether or not she had permission to do that. She said yes, that she did.
Did you have discussions with Detective Lefevre about what he was tasked to do and what he ended up finding out?
We had conversations.
Were you aware that what Ms. Soul told you about the ATMs was proven to be inconsistent with what you found on the videos?
What she told me in reference to,
Who used the ATMs?
I'm not quite sure that I'm understanding that. Eloise used the card and she said that she could use the card.
My point is, ma'am, is that Ms. Soul tells you folks, you, Detective Lefevre, any transaction with the ATM would be Mr. Bybee. You then go and get the videos and you see that's not true.
That's correct.
Thank you. No further.
Thank you. Cross.
Were you there when Marcia Soul called and said that Bybee tried to kill her? Were you there to talk to Ms. Soul about Bybee's migraines? Or were you there to investigate a violent crime that had been allegedly perpetrated on an 80-year-old woman?
I was there to investigate the crime that she was alleging.
And isn't it true that sometimes Ms. Soul gets off topic?
Yes.
And wasn't it important for you to direct her back to topic and talk about the crime?
Yes.
So when you told her to stop it, as she was going on and on about Frank Bybee's migraines, what was the point of saying stop it?
To be honest with you, I don't even know that I was necessarily speaking to her. I had another person there, Sergeant Shirtliff was standing with me, and...
Well, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you were talking to her. Let's just say that you did say stop it to her.
Mm-hmm.
Why would it be important to your investigation or your interview for her to be telling you about Frank Bybee vomiting in a pail when you said stop it?
Well, discussing his migraines and the vomit pail was not relevant. We were there to talk about the attack on Marcia, and we were there to discuss the checks and the other things that she was alleging had occurred to her as a crime. So obviously, off topic, migraines would not be something I would want to hear a lot about.
Okay. And when you're interviewing victims of a violent crime, do you, if they do digress, do you focus them back on why you're there?
Well, of course you have to.
Now, was Miss Soul upset and despondent when you got there at 10 o'clock on the 12th?
She was.
And was she agitated and upset?
She was agitated.
Okay. As a detective, do you have the discretion to decide when and where and under what circumstances you will interview the victim of a violent crime?
We do.
And if you need to turn your recorder off and attend to other duties, or allow Miss Soul to go to the bathroom, or have a bite to eat, is that perfectly legitimate?
Absolutely. It's a very fluid scene. There's a lot going on. There's questions that have to be answered. I have other people there, such as the supervisor for forensics, and Jerry Wagner is there, and Sergeant Shirtliff is there. They're doing other things as well. People are asking questions. There are phone calls being made, so I'm trying to kind of multitask. It wasn't a conversation or an interview with her that we stopped and then sat there and then continued on again. In these kind of investigations, you get pulled away to do a lot of different things, and this just happened to be one of those.
And during that time that you were there, how long were you out there that day? 4 hours?
Well, I arrived there approximately 10 in the morning and left close to around 3. I would have to look back at the reports, but when
That's close enough. That's close enough.
Okay.
And during that time, in addition to trying to ferret out what had gone on with Miss Soul and Bybee, wasn't it also important for you to direct Mr. Wagner to brief him, to tell him where to take the photographs of the crime scene?
I did. I had to stop, and there were questions that were being asked. I had to answer. And as we're learning more and I'm questioning Marcia more information is coming out. So you have to vet that and then kind of make a game plan. It's a game plan on the fly. It's really.
There's no template for conducting an investigation, especially when you have an 80-year-old victim who is obviously in at least some emotional distress, correct?
Correct.
And as you mentioned, more information came out during the course of your interview with her, correct?
Correct.
And didn't you have to do some things to plug leaks and make sure that the evidence that was not especially inside the house, but out there where Bybee had committed other crimes, that had to be addressed as well?
Of course.
And it was important to do so immediately so that you could make sure that the evidence was preserved?
Absolutely.
Is this a joint effort among the detectives and the sergeants, lieutenants, and even Captain Walsh?
Yes.
Isn't it true that this was a multiple offense case that had a spectrum that spread from October of 2016 through January 12th of 2016?
Yes.
And during that time, many people worked on this case, did they not? Detective
Absolutely.
Gaeta.
Absolutely.
And that it took all of the people you mentioned and more to get to the bottom of all the things that Frank Bybee had done to Miss Soul. Isn't that true?
Absolutely.
In fact, you didn't mention the digital forensic analyst.
Objection, yeah, let's go.
There was, in fact, a conclusion by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement based on their analysis. And isn't it true that Keisha White opined?
Objection. There's no knowledge.
Well, in order to verify that, I would have to know if she's ever seen the report. The report in this situation would be hearsay anyway, would it not?
Yes, sir.
Sustained.
I don't have anything at the moment, thank you.
Can you redirect?
No questions.
Thank you. Detective, you may step down now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take your roll. State, subject to recall?
Yes.
Oh,
Detective Gaeta, you are subject to recall, so please don't discuss your testimony with any other witnesses or potential witnesses in this case. Please, while you're released. Thank you.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense rests.
The defense has rested at this time. It's a perfect opportunity for us to take our lunch break then.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, the defense has rested. I have some legal things I'm going to do. And then I plan on being back here and reconvene at 1:30. Hour and 20 minutes, okay for all of you? All right, very good. We will see you back here after lunch. All right, very good. Please be seated, everyone. Any,
I would renew the prior motion, just for the record, because I have to.
Well, I understand that. We also have to give the state the opportunity to
Oh, yeah.
indicate whether they wish to call any rebuttal witnesses before you actually make that final J.
I always, it was my belief that you had to do with the close of the defense, close of the plaintiff, or close of the state, and then again if there's rebuttal.
The record is clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I have a moment to consult?
You may.
Yes, 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 yes. The state is going to call.
Well, we're going to do it after lunch anyway, so.
Yes, yes, but I just want to let you know that we will be calling a witness on people.
One witness?
Yes, sir.
All right, and then we will be able to entertain any motions you wish to make at that time, Mr. Kapir. And then I guess we'll go into the jury instructions.
Yes, sir.
Adjourn for the day, and then come back tomorrow morning for closings and deliberations. All right, why don't we take our lunch break now and just ask everybody to reconvene at 1:30, and we are in recess.
All rise, jurors entering.
Good to see you, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, the defense has rested at this point. The state will now be given the opportunity, if they wish, to call any rebuttal witnesses they feel are necessary at this time. So, Ms. Fravely, do you have any rebuttal witnesses you wish to call?
Yes, I would like to recall Detective Gaeta, please.
Detective Gaeta? Welcome back, Detective.
Thank you.
I'm sure I don't have to tell you this, you are still under oath, so
Yes, sir.
you may inquire.
Thank you. Detective Gaeta, this is going to be a very, very limited questioning. When you met with Marcia Soul on January 12th of 2017, had she talked to you about Frank Bybee stealing $65,000 from her before you showed her copies of those checks and questioned whether she had authored them?
No.
And when you did ask her about those checks, what was her reaction?
She cried.
What was her oral response, her verbal response?
Here's it.
Exception?
Was she upset?
She was.
Was she crying?
Yes.
Was she still under the strain of what had happened to her at 5:30 in the morning?
Objection.
Overruled.
Did she exhibit tearfulness and agitation based upon what had been done to her at 5:30 in the morning by who she identified as Frank Bybee?
Yes.
And during the course of your interview with her, did she tell you that she had not authored those checks?
She did.
And what was her reaction when you showed her those checks?
She was shocked.
Did she tell you why it was not she that had written them?
Sustained.
Thank you.
Rephrase.
Did she explain anything to you about those checks with reference to her signature?
She did. She indicated that that was not her signature.
And why did she indicate further? Did she elaborate upon that?
Objection. Here's.
Overruled.
She did. She said that that's not how she signs her name. Her signature is Marcia Soul. She specified that she does not sign her name Marcia A. or Marcia Ann.
To your knowledge, and only to your knowledge, Did Marcia Soul ever tell anyone else that Frank Bybee had stolen $65,000 from her until your conversation with her on January 12th during your interview?
No.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, did you interview Kate Trishler?
I did.
And Kate Trishler specifically told you that Marcia Soul mentioned $65,000, didn't she?
She did.
And that was before your interview, wasn't it?
What was Kay Trichler's interview?
No, Kate Trishler's conversation with Miss Soul was before you interviewed Miss Soul.
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Kate Trishler couldn't tell you any specifics. Was she able to tell you any specifics about what she remembered without consulting a notebook?
No, it was just a brief statement that she made and we moved on. Or she moved on in her statement.
All right. Did she have difficulty remembering anything about the conversation with Miss Soul?
She referred to her notes throughout the entire interview.
And that conversation between her and Miss Soul, that was never audio recorded,
No.
was it? So she could not refresh her recollection.
Correct.
And to this day, nobody knows actually what Miss Soul said to Miss Trishler, do they?
Objection.
Because
That's a broad.
Just sustained.
do we have any record of what Miss Soul told Miss Trishler?
No.
Thank you, nothing further.
Thank you. You may step down again.
Thank you.
May state any additional rebuttal witnesses?
No further rebuttals.
Could I see counsel at sidebar for just a moment?